Welcome to an interesting subject, Children's Literature and Reading Support, CLRS11 in short. That is for the DJPE and DPPE teachers course. I'm your tutor, Mrs. C. Richter. This is really an interesting and exciting course, as I've already mentioned, because you gain a lot and you learn a lot. Now, first year, and it's also for the first semester. Please take note, you may SMS, WhatsApp or email me during the week from 5 till 8. But it's always better to have something in written, for instance, the WhatsApp or the email. And please take note, we will answer them. And especially if you ask in the morning, we will only answer after 5, that you just take note of that. My cell phone number is also on the presentation, 0811281431 for your assistance. Now, before we start with the presentation, I would first like to give you a little bit of guidance for each and every student, that you just know how to answer your assignment. Now, this presentation that I have is based on 2019. Please take note, no 2018 assignments will be marked. Then please take note also plagiarism. It saddens us as tutors when we have to announce that there was copy work which led to suspension. So make sure you have all the resources, use the internet, you can use your study guide, books, everything to make a super assignment. Then remember, the presentation will guide you also how to answer certain questions. I know it's still new to this first year students, but you also will have sometimes choice questions. Make sure you answer only one, either A or B, or 4.1, 4.2, it depends on the number of the question. Then, questions asked need to be answered according to what is asked. Numerous students answer wrongly. That is an indication of you either don't know your work, or you did not study it thoroughly, or you misread the question. Now, I made an example here. Evaluating a reading program. Do not answer an evaluation based on a learner. Sometimes we ask evaluate something content-based, but then the students tend to answer how to evaluate a learner. Make sure what is asked. Yes, there can be questions. When we ask how to evaluate a learner's reading, then there you can answer content-based things according to the learner. Then, please take note, your assignment leads to your examination. Now, this presentation will guide you thoroughly through it. Remember, as I've also mentioned previously, that you cannot study only the presentation. It is compiled with assignment questions and then also examination questions. They do differ. Then assignments, let's look thoroughly how to do your assignment. You must use the IOL prescribed cover page. Please, it's very important that you use that. Then, table of content. A lot of students are not sure how to do that. So I've just compiled a short table of content here. You list it on your second page, table of content. Then you must have an introduction. Introduction, I just put you in brackets, what you expect from your studies. In other words, what do you want to gain, or what do you think you're going to learn from this? Then remember to number the pages. Then you start off with your assignment questions, question 1, 2, 3, until you are at your last question. Again, number the pages. I wrote there just a cue for you to see questions. Then conclusion. Please note, in your conclusion, you cannot write your friend's answer. You must say what you have gained. What did you learn? What did you really want to know about this assignment? Or even what you struggled with, and did you gain anything from that information or from the internet? You can compile your own answer there. Remember, your introduction as well as your conclusion is only a short paragraph. You don't need to write me an essay of 180 words. So please just stick to a paragraph, to the most important things. Then, marks will be given to a student's work if he or she used the facts from the study guide. Remember, we always go back to the study guide. Therefore, I made provision when I ask questions for the pre-primary diploma and the junior primary diploma. So take note. I also indicated it on the presentation. Then study hard and preferably daily, because I know IOL's standard is really high and they have an excellent course, teaching courses. Now, your assignment consists of the following. It's out of 100 marks. Question 1 will be 50 marks, question 2 25, and question 3 25. I just note here, critically discuss. Please make sure you know your verbs, as we will also have level 1, 2, and 3 based questions. It is in front of your study guides. All the verbs you need to know. Please familiarize yourself with that. Then, as I've mentioned, you've got all the resources. Please make use of them. The question papers as well as the assignment, some of the questions do correlate, but not all. So you can not only study your assignment for the exam. Take note of that. Now let's start with our presentation. I also compiled it, Unit 1, that you can see the different questions there. How to use a big book in the pre-primary classroom. PP only, I've mentioned it there. 1.2, decoding, explain the underlying element in reading comprehension. That is for the DJPE. Then 1.3, choose a story and discuss how you will apply it to the following skills for the pre-primary learners. DPPE can answer that. It does not, if the DJPE knows how to answer that and they wanted to know more, they are also willing, allowed to do that too. Then 1.4, to master reading, certain visual perception skills are needed. Then 1.5, what are the 5 semiotic systems? Unit 1 continues. Why are illustrations important, especially when an artist uses lines and shape as elements? Lesson planning can be problematic if students or teachers make mistakes. I've used some mistakes there that you can see how you can rectify that. Discuss phonological awareness and phoneme awareness and give an example of each. This is a crucial question for both sections. Then, Unit 1 continues still, 1.9. Define a multimodal text. This is what is also important to a student. You also need to know what is a multimodal text because you are going to use it as a student. Discuss the uses of a multimodal text in a reading skill promotion. Then master the reading. You need 5 key areas. Listening to read is a complex process, and learning to do so involves many tasks in a pre-primary class. Then promoting a reading culture in school. Now, we are going to start off with the first question. I will only touch on it as you can read through this presentation again, and I want to make you familiarize yourself with all the important things about a big book, especially in the pre-primary class. Now, next to me I have a picture here of Mother Goose. This is a typical big book with rhymes. I will just open it up. On the internet there are a lot of examples. There are even on the YouTube you can watch videos to see how to use the big book. Although you must just make sure you know what is expected from you. Now, in the big book, we will have, for instance, big pictures with only a few words. Now, what must I teach a child with a big book? To read from left to right. You can let the child even turn the pages and let him slide with his finger from left to right. Remember, when you hold the book upwards against you, make sure you mirror it because it's different. You cannot go from right to left then. So when you show a child the big book, when he or she turns the pages, you can show them that the words are at the bottom or sometimes it can be in the middle or on top, and show them we read from the top down to the bottom. Let them use their fingers to go along and see for themselves. Now this is about a big book. An example that I still have is, a lot of examples are on the internet. This picture shows, for instance, a little Grant and the big egg. Now be creative. Make with plastic bags a nice egg, or with paper mache, and put it next to a tree stump or a trunk, or you can make it with any materials so that the kids can have a visual. Remember, visuals are very, very important. Now, if you start also, let the kids see the heading and let them read the words, although they cannot read yet, that you can just show them big egg, and you touch and they can pinpoint and show big egg. Now, let's go to our presentation quickly. We use a big book to show what a word is. Remember, I just showed you even the topic, it's important. Now, a space before and after a word, you can show them. For instance, big egg, it's two words, big, and then there's a space. Let them clap hands or do something to show the space. Now, you can show them what a letter is. You can show them that the picture is on the left or the right side. You can show them where's the first word and the last word on a page. Show the children that we read from left to right. And let them do that in class together. Let them start. Remember, I said you must mirror it. So their left is from like left to right. It's opposite for you. So we go left to right, down diagonally, left to right again. That is the way they will start to read them. Now, we will look at decoding. Explain the underlying element in reading comprehension. This is a very crucial question. Make sure you do understand what is expected of you. Decoding refers to the child's ability to recognize a process, but in the written form. Children may try in many different decoding strategies before they become skilled decoders. Children develop also the ability to recognize certain high frequency and familiar words, basic words like in, on, involving memorizing the shape of each whole word or some unique features in each word and recognizing it when it comes up in print form. Now, for instance, sight word readers are actually limited to the words that they have memorized. Expert decoders need to decipher words and needs to learn how to identify irregular or exception words correctly. Here I can just mention that it's important that you teach a child with a rule. It's easier for them, and then you can just show them the exceptional words that does not comply to a rule. Now we will look to a story and how we can discuss to apply it, especially in the pre-primary class, with the following skills. Now, sensory and perceptual aspects of reading. You must be able to explain each skill as a student, but you have to connect it to the story. Now take a story that's familiar to you, for instance, The Three Little Pigs, or you can choose Little Red Riding Hood, or something that you like to apply, but make sure it's a children's book, and especially a pre-primary book. Now, sequence skills, I will show you. I have an example. Make sure it's in the correct sequence. For instance, we don't start off, I will take the example of The Three Little Pigs. We cannot start off where the wolf blow their house away. That's almost in the middle of the story. Now, the starting off point is where Mummy says goodbye to the three little pigs, and off they went. Experiential aspects, how and what they experience. This is where you need to explain to them, how do you feel? What do you experience? When they say, some of them will feel alone when Mummy says goodbye, but there you have to tell, no, the three little pigs are now big and they want to build their own houses. They are now finished with school. So explain to the children, especially the small ones. Then, the thinking aspect. what is there that they need to think of. For instance, the three little pigs make a plan. Each one of them built a house. Now, do you think the straw house was a clever choice or a good choice? Let them think. Some will say yes, some will say no, and later on they will realize that the stick house is a bit stronger. But at the end, the brick house was the best. Now, the learning aspect, what did they learn? Morals. Starting to say and greet mommy correctly before they set off to build their houses. Then the moral of the story is the brothers can help one another. At the end, the oldest brother was willing to support the two younger brothers. Association. What do you associate? Maybe the child has something he experienced and associate from the story with himself. I was not so good with my brother or my sister. I need to support my brother or my sister. Affective. I really do care about my brother or sister. The affection he or she has. I love my mommy. There's a lot of things that you can pinpoint from a story. Then constructive aspect. In other words, exactly what the word says, construct. What was constructed from here? They constructed the houses. Now, later on, you will maybe teach your children how to construct from box a little house or straws or something like that to make them aware what they can do in the art period or art side. Now, to master reading, certain visual perceptual skills are needed. Now, the handling of books, incidental reading, for instance, if you show them examples of sweeties, they can read Aero chocolate, they can just say, oh, that is a Kellogg's cornflake box, the wrappings of any sweets or food, and then also Pep Store, C&A, those they are able to recognize. So you can have examples of that in your class. Now they have to read and write their own names, and then they can draw over dots and colors. For instance, if you make little dots for their names, they can draw over there. Now, to recognize letters that have been introduced, you can show the different sizes and shapes. Let them see that, let them feel that. You can even master that by taking wood Phonological glue and shape the letter, say for instance the S or the O, and then maybe they can put sand over, maybe some materials, paste it with cloth. They can use some yarn, anything possible. Now make posters with pictures of words with the same phoneme. Teacher reads. It's very important. Teacher needs to read to children. Spatial orientation, and then copying letters, words or pictures. This is all ideas to master reading. Now you can have something similar. Maybe they made the letters or write it in the sand. Now they can copy it on paper. Remember, we always go from the basics, and then the final stage is to the paper and crayon stage. They can even paint that. There's many ideas that you can use. Now, we can identify a name of objects. For instance, like I said, Pep stores, they will see and they will immediately say, oh, that's the store where mommy goes and buy. Then also colors. Then similarities and differences, jigsaw puzzles. I can maybe just show here. Legos. You can have different, I just have it on paper that you can see, but you must have the basic concrete elements there. Here is the puzzles. Please, you can make your own. This is a puzzle that was a normal coloring picture where teacher then cuts it up for them and they are able to put it together. And then at the end it can have their names at the back. Remember, it's wonderful to have these kind of puzzles where they put it together, and if they turn it around, they can see their names at the back. Then the other normal puzzle that you can also create, there are endless ideas that you can get also from the internet, which is free and downloadable. Then the letters, I just have always the big and the small one. The big letter, let them form it with their fingers. They can write it in the air. And you can do it sand drawing. You can put glue over this letter. You can have either dots, and they can do the dots system. Dots are the normal. Let me just show you, for instance, if you make the dots like that. And the kids can then just copy and trace it with their fingers or with crayon later on. And then maybe have their name there, Sam. Children love to learn the friends' names. So if you do the Sammy Snake, you can do Sam that is in class. Or maybe Samantha is also in the class. Any name that is part of this class. Then in our story, we can have Sam walks. Now the child already see the familiar word Sam. Walks. Then you can even go further and say this is in the beginning. Where do you hear it at the word walks? And then they will say at the end. So you can have an idea, for instance, let them do, if it's in the beginning, let them put their hands up to show, and when it's at the end, let them clap. When it's in the middle, let them make another gesture to learn. Then you can put it into context again. He looks around him. Then you can see another word, looks. The children will immediately tell you, there's another that they've learned. Okay, now, as I've mentioned on our presentation, jigsaw puzzles, foreground, background perception, sequence, matching, interpret the picture. They saw Sam is walking there. He's going to look around, as I've mentioned, on our picture, because some of you have noticed there is a little doggy at the back. Now, if they turn around, Sam turns around, he will see the dog. Then that is part of interpreting a picture. Storytelling in the correct sequence. You can use pictures too. Again, we go back to the 3 little pigs, and identifying objects from shadows, parts, or incomplete drawings. Now, I'm not going to, I just want to come to this one quickly. Eye muscle development is very important when you do reading. I cannot emphasize this enough. Left to right reading and top to bottom. Memory recall, visual and auditory closure is important. Make sure, as I've mentioned, this is just the skeleton. Read more about these that you do understand if you are not sure about the concepts. Telling the news to the class, having a newspaper will be excellent. Remember, you can use those old big books and make your own newspaper. Then their first reading text. Just basic words like walk, sit, stand, but with a picture. Now, I just want to give you a few examples here. Introducing the arrow chart, direction is very important. So before you start with the reading lesson, let your child always do the arrow chart. With his whole body, he must show down, up, left, right. Let him show in the correct sequence. Storytelling will then be easy. For instance, the pictures there that you can see is a little bit jumbled. That's not in the correct sequence. You can put them in the correct sequence by first they greet mommy, they walk off, then they build their houses, and the 3 little brothers are at the end happy. But before that, the climax of the story was where the wolf blew the houses away. Now, children love to put pictures into sequence, especially when you tell the story. You can even leave 2 pictures out, and then they can draw their own, making an art piece, or their own idea, what was important to them in your story, and then they can complete that. Now, eye muscle development is important. For instance, if you have a theme, transport, you can sing the wheels of the bus go round and round, but then the teacher needs to use her eyes and turn your eyes around, round and round. Make fun and have them occupied doing things with their body. Remember, we learn with all our senses. Or you can use a ruler with a bright dot on. I think now of this pen, I can hold it up, it's also bright, and we can go round circles, round, or the other way around, and we can go from left to right, left to right. Remember, when we mirror that, it must be wrong for us but correct for the students or the learners. Now, examples of visual discrimination. A lot of students ask, what is visual discrimination? Visual is what you can see. Now, to discriminate, you need to see what is different. Now, in this case, we have a pattern. We have to recognize a pattern. We have a star, an oval, a square, and a rectangle, and another one. Now, if you say continue with a pattern sequence, they must be able to see, now first the star must come, then the oval again, and then the two rectangles. Visual discrimination means also I can look at two pictures that has a difference there. For instance, the one picture, the clown has got a red nose, and the other picture does not have one. So then the child can see that picture has a missing red nose. There are hundreds of examples on the internet with that also. Now, let's look at the 5 semiotic systems. First of all, I would like to explain to you what is semiotic. Semiotic is the study of sign systems. Now, it explores how words and other signs make meaning. Now, linguistic, visual, spatial, gestural, in other words, in gestures, and audio, how you hear them. There are different, the 5 semiotic systems are different from each other, so you need to know those 5 systems very well. Now, we come to an illustration of lines. Now, lines and shapes are used as an element by an artist. Now, let's look at this picture here. I want to give you the example. The line is the foundation of all drawings. It can be used in different ways, like suggest shape, pattern growth, depth, distance, rhythm, and movement, and also emotions. Now, I just have 4 for you. For instance, the wind. You can indicate a straight line with a curl will show the wind. Or water, by having just, instead of a straight line, you can see it flows like water. If I do it with my finger, kids love to repeat that and do that with their finger. Ice, it's this formal structure, and you can draw the lines and it's ice. Now, gravity with arrows, we can use that again. Now, let's look at the presentation. Line and shape lead the eye across the objects and subconsciously create the mood and impression. Remember the water line? It shows a flow. Now, a horizontal line creates a feeling of peace. A diagonal line, action and movement, for instance. Now, here's also examples of lines. A straight line, the horizontal, as you can see, it's a really calming effect. Nothing is happening there. But the minute I put a diagonal line at the back or on top, you want to see what's going on there. Then if it's totally a funny line, you want to know what happened there. Lesson planning can be problematic if students or teachers make mistakes, like the objective of the lesson does not specify what the learner will actually do. Please remember, objective. It is the most important part of a lesson because you are working towards your learner, but your objective is guiding you to what your learner will be doing. Now, will he write? Will he identify? Will he draw a picture? In other words, it will actually do the thing that the learner will do and observe. Now, a lesson assessment is disconnected from the behavior indicated in the objective. In other words, if the lesson assessment, you cannot ask a child, for instance, to do a mathematical worksheet when you are doing English, because they will be confused, and the lesson assessment does not have anything to do with the objective that you said. Now we are doing, for instance, Sammy Snake. We need to find all the Sammy Snakes and encircle them. Now, if you don't have an objective, your lesson is a total failure. Now, the materials specified in the lesson are extraneous to the actual described learning activity. For instance, like I've mentioned, will the learner encircle? Will he cross out the semi-snakes? Or must he color them? Must he do the dots and connect them? Now, the teaching is not effective for the level of intended learning if your objective is not specified. The learner activities described in the lesson plan do not contribute in a direct and effective way to the lesson objective. Now, make sure that your learner activities will focus and do what your objective is asking. Are they going to find it? Are they going to encircle? Are they going to write it or making an art piece? Make sure that you pinpoint and mention it. Now, discuss the phonological awareness and phoneme awareness and give an example of each. Dear students, make sure you do know what is phonological awareness and phoneme awareness, and always make sure that you know the example. Make sure you have an example ready to explain. Now, phonological awareness is when a child becomes aware of the fact that spoken words are made up of sounds. Phonological awareness can take the form of awareness of rhyme, awareness of syllables, awareness of onset words, etc. Now, phoneme awareness is essential to the process of learning to read. Phoneme awareness is what is necessary for the child to understand that the letters in written words represents the phonemes in spoken words. For example, the alphabetical principle. You must understand that the letter N stands for the sound N. We say N, but the sound is N by itself. It is not phoneme awareness. Children need to understand that the word handle has a N sound in it, and that the N sound in the middle of handle is the same as the N sound at the end of alone. Now, you must know, let the children also be able to see, is it in the beginning, in the middle, or where's the letter? Children know that the word wait is made up of 3 phonemes, and that the word pull and map both contains the phoneme P. Now, for instance, wait, W, A, T, wait. Make sure that you know what is syllables and what is a phoneme. Children know that phonemes are the building blocks of spoken words, and these building blocks can be rearranged and substituted to make different words. Now, teaching phoneme awareness facilitates later into reading acquisition. Remember, reading failure can be linked to a lack of phoneme awareness. Now, phoneme awareness is a type of phonological awareness. Phoneme awareness goes beyond phonological awareness by placing the emphasis on the individual phoneme within the word. Phoneme awareness skills include the ability to isolate phonemes, like I've already said, first, middle, or last. You will see with the example, then you will understand a little bit better. The ability to segment words into individual phonemes, or the ability to delete a specified phoneme from a word. Now, here's an example. Find and mark the S sound in each picture by marking its position on the block with a cross or a tick. You can make your own, use your own discretion to make your own examples. Now, bus, where do you hear the S? It's at the end. So they will cross out the last block. Sun, where do you hear S? They will cross out the first one for sun. Now let's look at the multimodal text. Multimodal texts, they are always combined with 2 or more semiotic systems. Now remember, we already did semiotic systems. If you are unsure, go back and make sure that you know what a semiotic system is. Now, I've also mentioned that students must be able to use this. This is your internet. You can use for instance, a video. You can use your digital camera. You can use a lot of things that is combined into one lesson. For instance, you want to create an effect. Multimodal text can then be created using different media or technologies. They can be alive, paper, digital, electronic. If you need to, invite a nurse to your class and let her show the syringe, let her use all the scissors, let her show how she's doing a bandage, just for an example. Now, I've included here a book, Daniela Ballerina. Now, Daniela, if you click on the book, the little bee is moving with the ballerina. That is also multimodal. While they sing and talk, they dance. Around the farm, you know these little books where while you read, you can do the different sounds of the animals. That is to give an effect and for the child to recognize the sound of the farm animal. Now, to produce this multimodal text, students need to be able to use traditional literacy practices in combination with these modern things. Do not just put a video up, combine them. That will have a more qualified and quality effect. With the understanding rules of designs and working with different forms and methods of images, you will have movement with your text, and that is where children are very occupied, because they see different medias and not only a video or a TV program. Multimodal text can be then paper, books, posters, comics, combined with other things. Now, remember to, as I've mentioned, just to use different multimodals. For instance, your slide presentation, ebooks, web pages, animations, and these are excellent ideas to keep your child occupied in class. And remember, they can only concentrate for a few minutes, so the minute you go to another multimodal text, they will quickly see that's something new, and immediately you will have their attention again. Multimodal text, as I've mentioned, can be a live performance or an event like the nurse visiting the class, and then the learners can play and perform the story at the end. Now, they will get proficiency in literacy because they are using the story and the different methods that you occupied them with. Now, together with processing the modes of images, sounds, and movements, your multimodal text or lesson will be excellent. Now, we can look at to master reading. 5 key areas are very important. Remember, we discussed what is a phoneme. It's the smallest part of a word that makes meaning, word recognition and phonics, and comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency. Please make sure, students, that you know these words. You cannot write frequently for fluency. I've discovered that some students are not sure about the words, and then they know it's a fl word, but then I get different words. Make sure you know. Fluency means when you read that it's fluently, not word for word like Sam is going to town. Fluency is Sam is going to town. Now, learning to read is a complex process and involves many tasks in the pre-primary class. It's important that the DPP, I've indicated there, make sure you know this, as it is a very vital question. The child must hear and be able to recognize the sounds that are spoken and then determine the differences between the sounds. For instance, if you have your big book, like we've made the example of the S, let the children say the sound S, like in Sam. Now, it is often referred to as the auditory perception as they listen to it, then they can even draw it in the air. The child will need to recognize different sizes, shapes, positions, and the form of the 26 letters at the end. Now the child will need to have a sense of directionality and hold the book with the cover first and opening the pages from left to right, especially when you have it up front, that you need to know that when you turn, that it's correct for them, so you mirror it again. Directionality is also needed to read from left to right and from top to bottom. The child will need to remember the sequence of the sounds. For instance, stop and spot. They are differently spelled. Although they have the same letters, it's different words and different meanings. Now the child will need to learn the letters and combinations. This requires knowing the upper and lower case letters, capital and small letters like we normally talk. The two letters that make certain sounds, sh for instance, or the two letters that make one sound, k. Then, the certain sounds are made up of many letters as in laughter. Now sometimes a letter is pronounced differently in English, as in and, the a, as in ate, as in read. So you need to show that to your children when you come to that. The child will need to know that b and b are the same. The one is just the big letter and the other one the smaller letter. But p and b are different, and the child must observe the difference between the b and the d. Besides these decoding skills, the child must also get the meaning from the words to read. Now, the child must use visual and auditory skills at the same time. The child will need to remember many rules. It's always good to teach the child a rule. They will have to understand the semiotic nature and meaning, the symbolic of grammar, for instance, the capital letter, the comma, etc. Now, you can read through that and have the whole reading process also for the DJPE. Just remember, reading is weaving together all these impacts. Then, to develop comprehension, children need to develop. You can read through the comprehension knowledge and many topics. Remember, children have knowledge of various kinds of texts. It's important, you cannot just stick to one. Give them the newspaper, some magazines, comics, everything to read through. Then I want to continue. You can read through the learning as it is a long question. Then how to promote a reading culture in school. You can encourage your child different ways. Please make sure, this is in Unit 1 still, go through it and see how you can promote it and make short summary notes for you. Then Unit 2, I've also compiled a lot of questions there where you can see what is expected from you. I'm not going to go through all of them. You must make sure that you know all of them. Just remember, list psychological needs literature can satisfy. That is a very important question. Then, question 3, it's also based on the units. You will find all these questions in Unit 3. Again, I indicated DJPE as well as in Unit 4. I also indicated a few pictures that you can have ideas there. Then, with Unit 4, I just want to emphasize Namibian guidelines, methods of reading assessment, and the components of powerful instruction of effective teaching for learning difficulties. Please make sure you know the difference there. Your Namibian guidelines, the methods of reading assessments is continuous observation. Then determine the skills and the knowledge through purposeful activities and discussions. Anecdotes. Now, what is an anecdote? I just want to explain that. That is how you observe a learner, not your ideas, not what you think, but what you observe. And it's very important to make those observations. Then, the Namibian guidelines, the methods of readings for the DJP, early grade assessments, the EGRA. Please go through the EGRA tool. It's very important that you know and familiarize yourself with that. Then the components of powerful instruction of effective teaching for learning difficulties, DJP, especially the DJP course, Unit 4 is very important. You teach essential skills and strategies, and you provide differentiated instructions. Provide explicit and systematic instructions, and provide opportunities to apply these skills. Do not cover critical content, but be sure the learners learn it. Now the same for the students. You must also learn and you need to familiarize yourself with all this content. It's quite a hectic and a long PowerPoint presentation. I need you to go through the whole PowerPoint presentation to make sure you do understand all. Now, good luck, and make sure you study very hard, that you have this and on information. And remember, as I've already said, every bullet is just a fact. You need to put some more body around it and make it your own. You cannot copy directly from the internet or from your study guide, because you need to make it your own. Good luck with your assignment and examination.